All right, what's up? Welcome in GC Live Monday episode of the show. Back at our familiar 2 p.m. time for this Monday. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. Man, talking about, of course, South Carolina. Big win over the Missouri Tigers Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium. But first, a guy who was very fired up, much like the rest of you, our good friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Clint texted me very succinctly and said, I did not see that coming on Saturday. And I thought that kind of summed it up. South Carolina, of course, finding a way to win, maybe not quite the way any of us predicted going into it. But, Chris, as I wrote in my rewatch today on GamecockCentral.com, please go check it out. It's maybe the longest thing I've written about a game in years. Please go read it. It's on GamecockCentral.com. But as I said then, maybe we were all ignorant to think it could be just this easy to beat this Missouri team. The most annoying team on the planet, I am convinced, because they just find a way, especially against South Carolina. They just hang around on you. Like they just do not panic. They're going to run their outside zone. They're going to run their complementary plays off of it. They're a much different team. We'll get into all this later. They're a much different team with Brady Cook, with their top running back. They just look different than we've seen from them for a good portion of this year. They're a different team. They came in. They were game for a matchup. They did not panic. But South Carolina, in the end, at the end of the day, finds a way to win. I got, of course, like all of you, I've got a group chat with some Gamecock buddies. It's like, man, guys, how many South Carolina teams win that game? Like how many past teams find a way to win that game? And Chris, we are a little bit, I would say, numbed to big finishes, to the big plays. You get to watch, if you have ESPN Plus or you're streaming on SEC Network Plus, you can watch literally hundreds of games a week. You get thousands of highlights on your social media. If you have NFL Red Zone, you're literally only watching the top plays. So we're maybe a little numb to the big finishes to an extent, but how often do you get to watch your team, your guys, your the school you went to or the school you've been pulling for your entire life? How often do you get to sit in Williams-Brice Stadium or sit in your living room at your home and watch your team drive down the field with the game on the line, with the special season on the line, with your, even if they're small, but there still exist playoff hopes on the line, and watch your team find a way to win the game with an epic, memorable drive, epic, memorable moment. And it just reminds you that's why you watch all the other games, is that you get the perspective. You go through all that heartbreak to where you can enjoy that little moment right after you score, and the entire foundation of Williams-Brice Stadium almost crumbles beneath you.
And it was the way in which it happened. It is not, to your point, Wes, common that you have an opportunity with 1 minute left to go win the game. Only a few times, has that even happened. Even fewer times has it happened successfully, where you have an opportunity, a legitimate opportunity to go down and do that. But I think, Wes, so many different things at play, all the storylines coming into this game, and then just the way the game unfolded, right? Like we know all the things, Brady Cook's health status, losing the potential of losing 6 straight in this series, where you go from you're up 21-6 at halftime and you're sitting there going, we're going to do this thing. And then you look up and you're down, and then you're back up, and then you're down again, and you're staring that 6 straight defeat in the face, and you're sitting there looking at Eli Drinkwitz saying, not again, not to this team, not to this guy. You've got an opportunity to get off the field, and basically the game's over on a 4th and 5. Missouri, nightmare scenario, something we talked about going into the game. The thing you've got to avoid is playing well on a couple downs, or in this case, 3 downs, and then having Luther Burden, who's a stud, make that type of play on you. And it turns out an even better play than even Missouri could have dreamed of, with a one-handed touchdown. Then having, in this instance, as weird as this sounds, Wes, the good fortune that he scored when he did, so that you have some extra time on the clock if they were going to score, to go down and do it. And then, of course, what a performance by your offense. I mean, top to bottom, you got to credit everyone, from the offensive staff to the players out there executing. Lenoris Sellers, phenomenal performance, phenomenal last drive. Delvon Campbell coming seemingly out of nowhere to be the leading receiver, having a huge catch, his second big catch of the game, and then a perfectly executed, perfectly called shovel pass, and then a supposed earthquake at the end of the game where you score. So, I mean, there were just so many storylines in this game, and man, it is hard for me to remember a time that, you can only pick out a few game-winning drives just in general, but the emotional roller coaster within the span of 2 minutes on the game clock, less than 2 minutes, was just incredible in this one.
Well, and you basically essentially had 2 game-winning fourth quarter drives for South Carolina. I mean, you yes. thought you had answered the bell and drove down the field and scored the game winner the first time. If you're sitting at home watching this game, you're like, this thing has everything. Like, the fourth quarter, incredibly, just a brilliant game. And so Missouri scores, they go up. South Carolina answers. Missouri answers back. Then South Carolina, seemingly with very little time left, finds a way to answer again and goes right down the field and scores. So this game had everything, and it was just a special moment top to bottom, because if you're going to win a game like this, you're going to need performances from not just one guy. It's going to have to be everybody chipping in, finding a way to win this game. And by the way, if you're joining us on GC Live now, either via the podcast or the live show, we don't really do the whole, hey, like, review, subscribe, all that stuff. We don't really ask for it very often. We do got a lot of people already on here right now already. So wherever you are joining us from, I am going to ask this time, do us a favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're on a platform that has some stars, give us some stars. If you think we're 5-star worthy, give us 5. If you don't, give us whatever you think. We'll accept it. Hopefully you go 5. But hopefully you're in a good mood. Just be in a good mood this week. Enjoy this. And Chris, I didn't really know where to start, either with this show or with my breakdown on Gamecock Central. So I actually thought it's kind of fitting. It kind of works. Let's begin with the end and actually work our way backwards, because I think it's actually the most fitting way to look at this game. And not quite the end, but very close to the end of the game. And that would be, of course, Rocket Sanders' brilliant touchdown. Very well blocked as well. Let's give credit to everybody involved on this play. Great play call. It was perfectly timed. But at the end of the day, once you got 5, we've talked about this quite a bit this season. You have to get him a little bit of space. Like, you've got to get him with a head of steam. And, the thing about Rocket, we've seen that the last few games. They've been able to give him that space. This game was a little bit different, Chris. The running game, the room to operate, the ability to kind of get him into that second level and then let him go to work. It was not quite there. It just wasn't. I kept wondering, all right, are those plays going to start to hit like they have the last couple of games? They never quite did. But in this case, on the shovel pass, they get him in space. He gets ahead of steam. It's perfectly blocked on the onset. And then he just had one of the best, I'm not going to be denied, touchdown runs after the catch that we've seen from a Gamecock player in quite a long time.
I thought Lenora Sellers summed it up pretty well. He said there's not a DB that wants to tackle Rocket Sanders, is what he said after the game. And man, you go back, Wes, and it looks like it, right? It's easy to go back and say, which I texted you this and some others. What is so-and-so doing on this play? They look like they don't. But what you realize is they are trying, and that Rocket Sanders is just running through guys, running over guys. And, to quote him after the game, he told, who was it, Mazio Bennett, I'm about to get in the box. When he heard the play call, he knows this is my time. Give me a little bit of space, and we're going to make this happen. And Wes, I remember, sitting there watching that play, like you see, okay, looks like I wasn't expecting that play, first of all. Wasn't on my bingo card of play calls. Don't think it was on Missouri's. You break it out, the immediate reaction is, ooh, shovel pass. Then you see a little bit of daylight, right? This thing's not blown up immediately. There's a little bit of room. You see this is going to be a positive play, but where my head went, and remember, this is in the span of 1 or 2 seconds, this will be a nice play to set up the next play. You can call timeout, could set up the next play. Lo and behold, he just keeps going. And then he keeps going and keeps going. And just an amazing effort. And this is why you recruit. This is why you recruit a guy like Rocket Sanders. That was just a my guy's better than your guy. Actually, a my guy is better than your guys, plural, play. And this, man, what we've seen in the past few games from Rocket Sanders, I know this wasn't the statistical game that we've seen from him the past couple weeks. It wasn't his biggest game. But that last play shows why you recruit a Rocket Sanders and want to have guys like him on your team.
Yeah, and I hadn't quite thought about it like that, Chris, but that's a good way to put it, man. As I'm trying to replay what I was thinking in my head, if there's like in that situation, if there's a throw to the end zone, everybody stands up in like anticipation of, oh, is my guy there?
Yeah.
Is their guy there?
Yeah.
Is the ball delivered to the right spot? And then you're kind of like, it's like he's got this one. It really was like I was like, oh, interesting call. Oh, positive game. At no point when it was first starting was I thinking this is a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then when he started just running through hurdles, people, just I'm trying to think of a better word for it, but it was like when he started checking off boxes, like, all right, that guy's out of here. That guy's out of here. And you could kind of see him building head of steam. And man, Katie, who does photos for us on Gamecock Central, she had some great photos of just the buildup and then the carnage after, where you can see guys just on the ground. But there's a great one. There's a great one. You can basically see Rocket's face and that final defender's face, and they're both have their eyes shut, like absolute freaking collision. I'll give credit to that guy. Unlike some of his teammates, he was willing to be put on the poster.
Mm-hmm.
He was willing to be the man in the arena. He was willing to take the hit and try to get a stop. But at that point, there's that last little effort from Rocket where it was just a literal I will not be stopped moment. And man, that's just rare. The whole thing was so rare, like so special. And let's start reversing back as we work backwards. None of that is possible without the drive leading up to it. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get to, I mean, even the play call before it, at first I was like, so they run the little QB draw with Sellers. Like, okay, somewhat conservative call, but you have your timeouts. And looking back on that play, I kind of love it because you kind of know you need a touchdown. You're not playing for a field goal here. But the last thing you want to do if you're South Carolina was straight drop back from where you were prior to the first down Sellers run and get hit, get sacked. And now you have Herrera kicking more along the lines of getting into like those 40-yard plus field goals that we have seen, frankly, that are kind of the edge, the fringe part of his range. Now you're putting him in the same, this is just what happened against Bama, happened against LSU, and you're asking him to push through that and hit a game winner or game tire for you. Well, by getting positive yardage, one, you forced Missouri to at least acknowledge, hey, they're still willing to run the football. They're still willing to go QB run. That, if you wanted to drop back on second down, that saves you a little bit of time. If you drop back on second down and you get hit, you get sacked, you're still in very makeable field goal range. So I thought that was a just low-key, very smart first down play. And then, of course, you call the timeout. That gives you a moment to say, all right, we're not calling this play on the fly, right? We're talking on the headset. All right, what's our favorite play in this spot? Like, what do we really love here? And that's when Dow reaches in his back pocket and goes shovel pass. And for the second time this year, it has been money for South Carolina. So let's credit that sequence. But even before that, some beautiful throws from the North Sellers. We're going to have a complete Sellers segment here in a minute. But I want to use it to talk about the play of your so Sellers, Sanders, Simon is the core of your offense, right? You don't win this game without contributions from a lot of other people. Delvon Campbell on both of the quote-unquote game-winning drives. Delvon comes up with huge catch and runs, or camp, as Beamer calls them. Zooming out for the game entirely, Nick Harbor, looking more comfortable, has 2 big catches and draws 2 big penalties on the defense as well. Gage Larvidan, I think he had 1 catch, but it was a beautiful route, first down catch, makes the play. That mattered earlier in the game. Jared Brown, to me, looked as comfortable, confident, most importantly, healthy and quick as we have seen from him in a long time. And, of course, Mike Smith, who has played a lot, but hasn't really had as many catches as I thought he might this year with the big touchdown. We're going to save Brady Hunt and the Houdini play for a moment later. Those guys, I'm trying to keep us focused on a task here. Chris, the wide receivers stepping up and making plays against the Missouri defense that did run a good bit more man coverage than I think I anticipated going in.
Yeah, I mean, you got to credit those guys. They have gotten better, I think, as the season goes along. And, just as a collective group, it's not – I think we have the answer to the question, Wes, that we posed before the season. Somebody is going to lead the team in receiving yards, receptions, receiving touchdowns, and it may be a receiver. It may be a tight end like Josh Simon, right, by the time the season's over. But we kind of wondered, would there be one guy that was kind of head and shoulders above the other receivers in terms of production? That was the case last year, right, when you had Xavier Luedecke, over 70 balls. What you wanted to do was kind of diversify it a little bit more. I think what ended up happening at the beginning of the year is, yeah, you diversified it some, but you weren't getting as much production as you needed, especially with a young quarterback that's a situation where you'd love to have more help, more guys to get easy access throws to, more downfield throws, more guys that can make things happen and kind of bail you out of some situations. But as the year has progressed, we'll get to Sellers. Obviously, we know his trajectory. I think this group has gotten better too. I do think we have an answer in that this is more of a group that's a collection of receivers. There's not one star in this group, but I think you just laid it out there well. You've had Gage coming on in the back half of the season. Jared Brown's been banged up, but man, on that screenplay, how about 2 successful screenplays in a row, Wes, for touchdowns? One by Rocket Sanders against Vandy, the Jared Brown one in this game. Well executed, well done. Something that seems to have been missing in this Gamecock offense for quite a while. Shane Beamer talked a lot leading up to A&M, after A&M, about the receivers being better, in the scramble drill, right? We've seen some plays where they've had success on that because Sellers is going to be a guy who will have scrambles. As your receiver, you got to be good there. So I think Mike Fury, in his first year at South Carolina, former NFL receiver, knows how to play the position. I think he is doing a good job of bringing this group along. Nick Harbor, man. I mean, and we'll get to Delvon Campbell. 2 games in a row now where you saw Vandy and you went, ooh, there's something here with Nick Harbor. It's the most comfortable he had looked catching the football, not just running it. Everybody wanted to see the go route. We saw that from Harbor a couple times this game. Runs a good route, beats his guy, drew a couple flags as well. Couple downfield balls, including a touchdown. Dream scenario for Gamecock fans. But look back at the Vandy game, Wes. First down catch over the middle. Catches a quick out route. Makes a man miss. Runs through another couple of guys to get past the sticks. Back-to-back weeks where he looks more comfortable. And then how about Delvon Campbell, right? He's a guy that's played some this year. He's played 100 and something snaps. Not as much lately. Only 4 catches coming in. But a guy that the staff liked out of the portal. He's a 6-year guy. He's big. He can run. We saw that. So kudos to him for stepping up when his team needed him late in the game, the second half, and coming up with 2 huge, huge plays.
And on both of those plays, man, saying like not just catching the football, but saying I'm getting north and south and I'm showing off my speed and I'm going to turn what was already a good play into a huge play for South Carolina. And something that I think is a little bit nuanced, but if you look at the big catch on the final drive, so the second fourth quarter big drive, that play was out of the timeout. And if you're running 2-minute drill, and this was really like a 1-minute drill for Carolina late in the game, and you're not coming off a dead ball situation, you're having to just get lined up and just go, right? Well, I think it was off timeout. Clock was definitely stopped. It was either off the timeout or the incomplete pass. It was one of the two. I think it might have been incomplete pass, but it doesn't matter. Carolina, because clock was stopped, was able to motion Delvon across the formation prior to that play, which gave Lenoris a key indicator pre-snap. All right, I've got man coverage again. And for a young quarterback in a high leverage, high pressure situation, any information you can give them pre-snap is incredibly valuable, especially is it man, is it zone? And it was kind of set up. He motioned all the way across the formation, and then he ended up being the outermost man. And then he's running like a deep kind of dig across the middle of the field and runs away from the defender who is in man coverage with him. So I think that was kind of the way Lenoir was able to deliver that ball. The confidence he threw it with, the pace he threw it with, was because he had a very good feel for exactly what he was seeing on that play from the Missouri defense. And I really thought, let's start to continue to wind backwards to the drive before that. As much as people talk about Lenoris as a runner and the dynamic ability there, this kid made some brilliant throws on Saturday night. And I thought in the final 2 drives, he had a little extra pace on the football. He was very, very specific in where he was putting the ball in terms of accuracy. We saw earlier in the game, great touch on several throws. But as he dropped back, he delivered the ball, I thought, with kind of decisiveness, you would say. And it was just very, very impressive. And no play was bigger, in my opinion, in the game than the third down latest Houdini act, which we have seen from Sellers the last, I don't know how many games, but especially starting with A&M. You saw it A&M, you saw it Vandy, you saw it on Saturday. When he is seemingly dead to rights and then somehow gets out of the defender's grasp, rolls out, tosses a touch pass to Brady, who not only makes the catch, gets upfield just enough for the first down. And that was at a time, Chris, it's easy to forget because of everything that happened. That was at a time when the offense really for the only time the entire night had started to hit a little bit of a lull those last couple of drives leading up to that play.
Yeah, it was just such a huge play because you go from big negative play to big positive play. And, I was talking on the shovel pass, the last play, last offensive play. Well, it wasn't technically last offensive play, but South Carolina's game-winning touchdown, basically. That's why you recruit. That's why you have difference makers. Lenore Sellers is a difference maker, Wes. And this is why, broken record here, right? We weren't just making up things based on Lenore Sellers' high school potential, or his potential in college or even the pros based on what he did in high school. You saw that, and if you ever watched him play, you knew what he did. It got your attention. But there were so many people that have seen Sellers in high school, in college. Remember, he was on campus last year as a redshirt freshman. People that have been around the game for a long time. People that have seen a lot of great players and great quarterbacks in college football that consistently said this kid has special talent. And some of the names that they would bring up as, hey, I've seen this guy play and this guy play. This kid, Lenore Sellers, has talent to be in that same conversation. And when you hear that, Wes, and you hear it not just from one person, it gets your attention, and you go, all right. But then you got to remember it's the toughest position on the field, and South Carolina is playing a very difficult schedule, and this is his first year as a starter. There was going to be a learning curve, and so there was a very small group that has now been silenced because there's no leg to stand on. He was overhyped. I don't think anybody's saying that now, right? If you really paid attention, it was this kid has elite special talent, but is going to need some leeway. What he's done, Wes, is continued progressing. Like he's making special plays that we've seen glimpses of. He's continuing to do that. He's getting better, I think, at just the basics, which when I say basics, that doesn't mean it's easy, but that's just kind of the hidden plays that when a guy makes a play, you don't really say that was an incredible play, but right, it's just something you have to be able to do at this level. And then he's cutting down on the negatives, the turnovers. That was the biggest problem, right? He's playing with a better pocket feel. But then when he does things like, almost get sacked, he can wriggle out. Look at the past few weeks, Wes. The turnovers have been cut down. One sack given up by South Carolina the past 3 weeks. It was against Missouri. A lot of that is because of Lenore Sellers' Houdini ability, right? But he's always had it physically. He's getting better at the mental aspect of it too, of being able to know the when and the where. And then he's able to make special plays just because he's a special athlete with special talent. So SEC Player of the Week, well-deserved, in-state guy. If you're a South Carolina fan, you got to be absolutely thrilled that this guy is on your team right now.
Yeah, you do. And I think, man, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but what does it look like? What does it look like down the road for Lenore's? What does it look like as he continues to get better? What does it look like as you continue to build this offense around him? You do lose Rocket after this season, which is obviously going to be a guy that will be hard to replace. But I think the rest of your skill, you lose Josh Simon as well. That's worth mentioning. But wide receivers are going to be, I think, in a really good spot next year. So who knows what that continues to look like as you develop this offense moving forward. And Beckham, I think there will definitely be, you can sell the opportunity to play with the Lenore Sellers, I think, if you are this staff looking for guys in the transfer portal once that opens up here soon. So we'll see what that looks like. But Chris, I just love the demeanor from Sellers with the game on the line. I mean, they're not that you can always just judge it by somebody's body language, but you look at the zoomed in views you got watching at home, just his body language watching it in the stadium, the way this team has their just complete trust in Lenore Sellers and that he's going to go do what he does. I mean, I think that says so much about a young player, a redshirt freshman in that situation, that he just did not blink. Like, if anything, I think he has the rare trait of a guy that when he gets backed into a corner, when he gets pushed, some guys, when they get pushed, they kind of put their head down a little bit. They kind of go into a shell a little bit. And for a person who really is not the most outspoken, like just super, just loud, talkative type person in their day-to-day life, at least from what we all see, when he gets pushed, this dude goes to a different place. He goes to another level. And we've all, if you've played sports at any level, you've been around guys like that who do that. But it's something entirely different to also be able to do that when you're on ESPN or SEC Network in front of 80,000 people, knowing if you make a mistake, it's going to be on you. You're going to be blamed. You're the quarterback. Yet he, I don't know, the best way I can say it, like, I don't even think just saying the it factor is enough. He goes to a different place when the moment gets bigger, I think.
Yeah, he has a kind of an uncanny blend of you looking at him and going, is his heart rate above 70 or, whatever? I don't even know what a good heart rate is, Wes. Mine's probably too high most of the time operating. He has that cool factor about him. But I know you pointed out getting after the ref a little bit on one of the plays. Go back and watch the Rocket Sanders shovel pass touchdown for the 350th time if you haven't already seen it. And watch Lenore Sellers pop in at the bottom of the screen. That's the most fired up I've seen him, right? I mean, and he has those moments. I mean, he is a supreme competitor. He shows it in different ways. It's not always super demonstrative, but that's another reason. Again, if you follow recruiting, if you had seen him play, if you talk to people who know Lenoris and have for the past few years followed his career, in addition to talking about the physical talents, which are obviously immense, like you can be a huge Gamecock hater, whatever. I mean, you would have to look at Lenore Sellers and be like, that guy's kind of special, with his talent level. Yes, that's obvious, but he's got it upstairs too. And just emotionally and how he carries himself, he really checks all the boxes. I mean, that's what we talked about with Lenore Sellers. When South Carolina signed him, get it on campus, you kind of go through and see what you hear. And it was just consistently talk about how he just had all the tools physically. He had all the tools from a leadership standpoint, all the tools mentally. And I think as he's progressed through his very first season as a starter, there's been a clear just upward progression in all of those areas.
Yeah, man, it is fun to watch, man. It's fun to just take in his progress as a player. And you know what? If you want to watch South Carolina games and watch the progress in person, of course, you can use our friends over at Game Time by getting the Game Time app. Let me tell you about them real quick. And the first thing that pops up, by the way, announced today, South Carolina versus Clemson, noon kickoff. We all know that is going to be a tough ticket to find. Why not head on over there and download the Game Time app, or just go to gametime.co where you can go ahead and prices you're going to pay. Let's just be honest about it. But there you see the app right there, kind of blurry, but you get the point. And you see right there, super deal, which what that does is it pops up and it tells you the best values on any tickets that are available right now for that particular game or concert or event or whatever it may be. Again, that's gametime.co. Game Time app. If you just go to the app stores, you can get seat views with a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You also have the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same spot, like the same section for the same concert or game for cheaper somewhere else. Also, like I always tell you, toggle on all-in pricing. It's going to show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Also, you have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, like we tell you as well. Once you download the app, create an account, use code OWN3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account, redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And shout out to them for being a sponsor and supporter of our show here on GC Live. Chris, how doubtful did Brady Cook look to you on Saturday?
He did not look very doubtful. And, first of all, I mean, and Beamer said this after the game. I think you got to credit him. Like, I've always, like, after that 2022 game where he came into Williams-Brice with Missouri and just, put on a really nice performance. And you said, dude, this is a guy that left a game earlier this year, went to the hospital, came back and finished it. Like, he's a tough kid. You kind of knew if he could possibly play, he would, but he seemed perfectly fine. You didn't see him take off running, things like that. But he did a really good job administering the offense. Obviously, Missouri leaned heavily on the run. But I'll tell you, we talked about this on the radio this morning on the game. That fourth down throw, he dropped it. You couldn't throw it any better. So just a big-time performer. You got to have a lot of respect for that. But, Carolina, and I don't know where you're going with this, Wes, so not to kind of reroute where you were going, but it did strike me like there's been a lot of talk about the Gamecock defense, their performance against the run. Was it their best game? No. Were there problems? Yes. No surprises, right? You knew Missouri was going to come in, run outside zone. That's what they did. And particularly in the second half, they had too much success with it. But South Carolina's defense, for all the talk about what they didn't do, what they did do was just as critical to the outcome of this game. First half, and Eli Drinkwitz after the game was lamenting all this. 0 for 6 in the first half on third downs, 3 of them in the red zone. You get a missed field goal in the first half. You hold them to 2 field goals as well. You look at the game as a whole, Missouri 1 for 9. So you're forcing decisions. You're forcing, hey, you got to go for it on a 4th and 5 to try to win the game. And they made the play to their credit, right? But the defense, yes, they gave up too many rushing yards. Yes, they still outrushed South Carolina. Beamer didn't like that. But they came up with some big plays when they were needed. And they came up with some big plays in the passing game as well, that some plays that Missouri's got great receivers. Sometimes they come down with those types of balls in the end zone as well.
Yeah, and I think, man, I don't know. Missouri was better on the line of scrimmage. They were more physical than I think gave them credit for coming into the game. I just think the combination of Brady Cook playing in the game and then their running back, Nate Noel, who has been banged up. He returned last week against Oklahoma, but he really was like, I think, himself this week. And they were talking on the broadcast when I went back and rewatched. They were saying, he is on a pitch count, but I didn't really see a lot of evidence of that really being the case in terms of like him not being able to go make plays. Like I thought he was honestly a difference maker for them. And so to me, his ability to get out there and just make plays on the edge in that outside zone, which we did talk about the outside zone, of course, going into the game and how important it is for what they are on offense and what they like to do, what they like to be. And I just think he's a good bit better fit for that than, than maybe their other backs. And he went out there and carried the football 27 times in the game and probably had the better rushing performance, I want to say, of anyone Carolina has faced this year. And And Travis Edwards, I normally agree with most of what Travis says, and I do agree to an extent. People are being a little too harsh on the defense, but I also, the less than 4 yards per carry doesn't really, to me, hold up, because I look more, what did their running back have per carry? And I just had it. Do you have the stats in front of you by any chance, Chris?
I do not have that in front of me.
Hold on, y'all give me a second. I know he rushed for $150. So he averaged 5.6 yards a carry. And let's see, Lacey, 4 yards a carry. They averaged 3.9 yards a carry when you take out the 19 yards the minus 19 that Brady Cook rushed for, which of course includes sack yardage in there. To me, Noel, when healthy, is just a better fit for what they do than Marcus Carroll, who was also a transfer in, was one of the top transfer backs out there, came in from Georgia State, was supposed to step right in and be the guy for them. But Noel going for 150, like once they got that outside zone going, it completely slowed down Carolina's pass rush, I think, and just kind of had them guessing. Like we wondered, or I wondered, I was like, can Carolina just blow this thing up by causing havoc? And maybe they hit a couple on you, but other times you're just in the backfield. Guys, I looked up at one point, and it was late third quarter, I think, or fourth quarter. They were just rolling through some stats on the ribbon boards in the stadium, and it said Missouri 5 tackles for loss. South Carolina, at this moment in the game, 2 tackles for loss. And I was going, Carolina just has not been able to get them down in the backfield like we have been used to seeing from this defense. So here's the thing. A little bit of an off night for the defense? Yes. Credit Missouri? Yes, absolutely. Did the defense step up and get you some stops and force some field goals and give you a chance to win the game? Yes, they did. But the thing I look at, this defense has been winning games for Carolina all year long. Well, sometimes when one side of the ball does not have their best day, that's when you lean on the other side. If you're a good team, if you're a great team, if you want to be a championship team, which is the goal, the other side of the ball has to step up and go win the game.
Yep.
And we've seen this offense be more and more complimentary in what they've been able to do for the defense. This was a game where the offense just said, you know what, guys? We got you. 2 game-winning drives at the end. No worries. We'll just go execute and do it. I think, to steal the word from earlier as well, I think that's pretty freaking special, man.
And I think we all talked about going in, Wes, how South Carolina needed to be able to pull away, in my opinion, to have the best opportunity to win this game. Start fast and finish, right? And there were 2 reasons for that. Number one, Missouri, and this is like the bigger reason, and then I'll go into maybe a reason why this has been the case for them. Missouri's been really good in close games. I mean, this year, they've either gotten blown out or they won close games. Their 2 losses were blowouts. Past couple years, I think it was said they were 8-0 in 1-score games. South Carolina this year, for whatever reason, couple very close losses. LSU, Alabama. Very close. 5 points in those 2 games. The other close one was Old Dominion. They were able to win that. So, every game stands on its own. But when you dig deeper, you go kind of, well, I wonder if there's like a reason that Missouri has been so good in close games. And I think, Wes, it's when they can play the type of game they want, where they're very patient. They're fine with kicking a field goal. They're fine with playing defense. They're fine with punting. They're not going to go try to make up a deficit. When they're down 21-6, there's not a 15-point play in football. They're going to go out there and you have an entire game. 21-6 at halftime. Not ideal. Not ideal that you're not getting the ball, but you don't have to completely throw your game plan out the window. Now, Carolina did end up in a close game, and they did end up winning it. So they kind of broke that trend. Missouri had been 8-0. Now they're 8-1 or whatever it is. But the game ended up being close. And for me, looking back, and you can't say, oh, the offense for South Carolina did its job in this game. They had one turnover. Defense picked them up after that because that was in Carolina territory. They had one punt. Other than that, they're out there making things happen, and they go down with a minute left and win you the game. So this is not a negative on the offense, right? But 21-6, you get the ball at the half. You're feeling pretty good if you're South Carolina. And you're saying, hey, if they can put together a drive here, especially a touchdown, it might put it out of reach. Then they start driving. They're in Missouri territory. If you look up at that point in the third quarter, Wes, and it's 28-6, even as patient as Missouri typically is under Drinkwitz, their game plan can't be, let's go run outside zone all game. They're going to have to open things up a little bit more, which plays into Carolina's hands a little bit more. But we all know Carolina stalled out, 4th and 4. They go for it. Would have been a long field goal. They don't get it. Missouri goes down to score a touchdown, and now it's a new game, right? So ended up being close, ended up playing into in the second half what Missouri wanted to do more. And I think that's why they were able to be more patient and run the ball. Credit to them. They executed it well. But South Carolina still got big stops that they needed on more than one occasion in the second half too.
Yeah, they did. And, man, there's been talk about the decision-making for Carolina in terms of fourth downs. And, I think both coaches kind of took their own approach to the game. And then by the end, it kind of all almost evened out. And it was like, all right, who's going to make a play late? Missouri went decidedly in the route of, hey, we're taking points. Even turning down a 4th and 1 when you've been running the ball well to kick a field goal and say, we're going to cut the deficit from 9-6 and get within 2 scores. Are you sitting there looking back? What if Missouri goes for their 4th down and gets it and scores a touchdown there instead of a field goal?
Yep.
Is it a completely different game at that point? Could be. Beamer went the approach of, no, we're trying to score touchdowns. And that was the mindset for the entire game. That was the mindset when they were in the red zone. That was the mindset on 4th downs. And, I tend to think, for me, the only one I really have much of a, kind of agreement with the fans on is the 4th and 1 on your, where are they at? Your own 37, right? And especially after they stopped you the first time and you kind of got a redo, I would have maybe said, all right, let's just reset this thing. Let's let Kai get a good punt, pin them deep, and let's see what happens. But if your mindset is, no, we're just gonna try to stay on the field the entire game. We're gonna go for it, and that lets you call plays, knowing you're gonna go for it on 4th downs. If that's your mindset, then I really have no problem with a coach being all in on that mindset. I have no problem with you thinking, hey, between Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders, the size these guys have, I feel like we're going to get, as Beamer pointed out, not just a yard, like a half yard, basically. So, when you don't get it on those things, people are going to question it. I get it. I also, everything being in a vacuum, I prefer aggressiveness over being passive. And I'm trying to go back through some of the other ones, man. One of them, you're at the first drive of the second half. You're at the Missouri 34. I'm not putting Herrera in that position.
Yeah, 51-yard field goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
William Jones says kick the field goal. The one from the 18 earlier in the game, maybe, but from the 34, no, we're not putting Herrera in that situation. And because you built a lead by being, let's not forget, South Carolina was aggressive with how they ended the first half. They aggressively called timeouts and tried to get the ball back. And what was the payoff? They got the ball back. They went down and scored a touchdown. So if your mindset is aggressiveness, you're going to take the good with the bad. And there was good as well. There was bad as well. But that's just how it works out. And at the end of this game, it kind of all evened out between the two completely opposite approaches and just came down to who was going to make a drive at the end. Well, to me, man, let's see. I was trying to go back through them all. The other one, was a 4th and 1. That was the one that was at the Missouri 17. But, guys, this was a 16-play, 57-yard, 7.5-minute drive where you have been running the football play after play after play. I don't think I want a coach that says early in the game, nah, I want 3 points on 4th and 1. It's easy to say that because you didn't get it. But I want the guy that wants touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think there's a tension there between if you go for it and don't get it, you're playing into Missouri's game, right? Where let's be patient, let's play defense, get the ball back. If you do I think South Carolina was trying to break the mold of what Missouri wanted the game to be, And look, it's not like you're doing all these things while not. South Carolina was having success in the first half of this game. They had success all game for the most part. If you take out, they moved the football, you punted once, you had a turnover, and then you had the turnovers on downs after you'd moved the ball. And you had, 2 4th and 1s? Was it 2 4th and 1s or 3?
2, I think.
2 of them. And then you had a 4th and 4. It's not like you're out here going for 4th and 10s.
Well, they had a 4th and 1 they converted.
Yes.
As well as what it
converted one as well. Yes. So you had 3 4th and 1s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second half, that one, again, 51-yard field goal. If you convert that and you go down and you score a touchdown, it's 28-6.
Mm.
And Missouri scored 6 points in the first half.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there going, they have to go down and score 3 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion if we do nothing the rest. So I think, you can kind of see both sides. If South Carolina converts all those, this thing might have been an absolute blowout. Now, because it turned out not being that and you didn't get them, those come under more scrutiny, and that makes sense.
Yes. Kendall has weighed in and said, don't forget about the recruiting rundown. We're up against our time limit. We got to go record a recruiting rundown with Kendall Smith. You're right, Kendall. I'm watching the clock. We're going to get off here. We're going to stop talking. Some people saying you can win games with field goals. Hey, Steve Spurrier always said 1-7 beats 2 3s. And if you go into those kind of situations, most of the time saying we want 7, over time, I tend to think the numbers skew in your direction, especially when we're talking about 4th and 1, y'all. That was not a 4th and 4 or 4th and 5. That was a 4th and 1 early on in the game. And there's no guarantee you're going to make your field goals anyway, especially the other one, the 51-yarder. I'm not putting that kid in that situation. So anyway, Exo says that's good math. Yes, it is. All right, y'all. I got to go do a recruiting rundown. So we're going to continue this tomorrow, 2 o'clock. We will have Beamer on Wofford by that point. We probably have a little final hit on this game as well, I think.
Yeah, we got some meat on the bone. No
we
doubt.
will break our rule We will not move on Tuesday.
Yeah.
There's just too much here.
Yep.
And be on the lookout. By the time you're listening to this on the podcast, you may have available to you the brilliant Kendall Smith and myself on a recruiting rundown as well. So we're going to go do that right now. He's Chris. I'm Wes. I'm going to go do that. We will see you Tuesday. Check us out, GamecockCentral.com, of course, and Gamecock Central YouTube. This has been good. Hope y'all have enjoyed it. Y'all have a good one.